Are we waiting for Mavis?
Okay. Good morning, Chris.
Oh, there you are.
Who else is
Good
online?
morning.
Okay.
Carol.
Ready for audio?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Audio's going on.
And action.
Oop.
What's happening? I'm getting feedback on it. I'm muted.
Probably want to, you muted yourself on the computer? Huh?
Yeah. Okay. Is that all right? Okay. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mavis Bates, and I am the chairman of the Energy and Environmental Committee. And I would like to bring our meeting today of July 15th to order. And roll call, please.
Allen. Caius.
Hi, it's present.
Molina.
Molina present.
Strathman.
Strathman here.
Wallace. Wojnicki.
Present.
Bates.
Present.
You have quorum.
Good. We do have a quorum. Okay. May I have a motion and hopefully to pass to approve the minutes of June 17th?
Wojnicki moves.
Guys, move.
Strathman
second.
seconds.
Caius got in there first, I think. It's like a bunch of kids in the back seat fighting over. Is there any discussion of the minutes from June 17th? Okay, call the roll, please.
Caius.
Guys, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes.
Strathman.
Strathman, yes.
Wojnicki.
Yes.
Bates.
Yes, thank you. Now I would like to turn the meeting. Oh, is there any public comment here or online? Would our interns like to make a public comment? Not at this time. Okay. Ms. Walnick, please.
Thank you. I have a few updates for the committee this morning. First, starting off with the Village of Lily Lake gasoline spill at Route 47 and Route 64. We had a great meeting with the AG's office earlier this month, and now have a copy of the 45-day report that was submitted to IEPA. Our staff is currently reviewing that report. In August, we plan to have a meeting with the Village of Lily Lake to discuss pending litigation with them. And we will also be following up with the health department regarding the testing of the wells. And so at our August meeting, I should have updates on both of those items. Any questions on that?
No, but I drove past there just to see what it looked like. It looked like a crater from, from a bomb or something. Was that there already, or was that part of the cleanup?
That was part of the cleanup, and that's something that we're working through with our wetland regulations with Campton Township.
Ms. Walnick.
The next item I have is
oh,
the,
there's a
Madam
question.
Chair, real quick question, Jody. How often are we testing the wells?
that's something we're following up with the health department on, and I should have additional information at the beginning of August.
And those would be the wells like located on Hanson Road, or the wells just east on 64?
As I understand, there was about 60 wells that were identified by Illinois State Water
Oh,
Survey as
okay.
potential testing wells. And there was a letter that was going to go out from the health department. Julie Weigle's been on vacation, and so I'm working on getting a hold of her to get an update on that.
60?
60,
Wow.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? The life cycle analysis was presented yesterday at admin committee. Oh, actually, that was probably Wednesday, wasn't it? We are expecting the bids for the washer and dryer coming in early next week, and that will be our trial run on the life cycle analysis. I'm still waiting for a long-term investment number from Treasurer Kilborn, and so I followed back up with him on that. That's an important aspect that goes into the spreadsheet. And we also recommended with the emergency boiler replacement that White and Company is working on, that would be informational for the board to have that also run through the spreadsheet to see what our numbers look like with the existing boilers versus their proposed 3 boilers that they'll be installing. So hoping to work with building management and White and Company to utilize the spreadsheet due to the additional costs of natural gas that have gone up about 200%. Those boilers use quite a bit of natural gas, and there are some of our larger equipment out there on that site. And so knowing what our energy use is for the proposed boilers would be important for the county board to know. I don't have this on my list, but I do have an update on our 4 ARPA projects. Those were the 4 water supply planning projects that were approved at county board last month. And we've been working closely with the state's attorney's office and Ernst & Young to get all of the paperwork in line for those projects. One of the projects, the Water Conservation Project, we're working with CMAP and Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. We've had a kickoff meeting with them, and they're working on the scope of work for that project. That is a very clear use of ARPA funds, and so we're moving forward with that one ahead of the other 3. The other 3, we are working through the paperwork and ensuring that those projects are applicable to the ARPA, and we have the sufficient backup information for that. So I anticipate in August that we will be working with Illinois State Water Survey on the scopes for those projects. So timing wise, I would anticipate seeing the proposal and agreement with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant and CMAP coming to this committee in September. And likely the other 3 will be coming in October. Any questions on that?
This is so exciting to me that we have got our life cycle policy working forward before we buy 2 enormous boilers. The washers and dryers are important, but just imagine the energy use of 2 enormous boilers. So yay. Yay on that.
Great.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Olnick? Okay.
I have one other item, again, not on the agenda, but I did want to mention that we did get from Finance this morning the budget presentation email. And because this committee is a subcommittee of the Development Committee, our staff reports, the main committee we report to is Development Committee. Our main budget presentation will be at Development Committee. I know Ms. Bates had requested a budget presentation at this committee, so I've reached out to Finance to see if it would be all right if we in August did a budget presentation that is a smaller version of what will be presented at Development, and we just present the funds that are applicable to E&E committee. So I'd take any comments back from that. I have not heard back from Finance, but I'm getting requesting their approval to do that.
I don't think we're a subcommittee of the Development Committee. Is that for budgetary purposes?
This committee was created originally, all the aspects of this committee were under Development Committee. And so our core department reports to Development Committee. That's where any raises for the director, myself, go through, as well as our budget is always presented as part of Development Committee. And so when it broke off and became a committee of its own, we still have Development Committee as our main committee. And so that's why, like, for example, Ag Committee, there's no budgets being presented at Ag Committee because they're, again, a subcommittee of Development Committee. Their directors all report to Development Committee. And so they're trying to minimize the number of budget presentations, is my reading of what the request was from our staff. But I know I want to recognize your request. And we do have several funds that do fall under this committee, not all of the funds, but several of them do. And so if Finance is amenable to that, then we would do just the funds that apply to this committee as a separate budget presentation from our main budget presentation, which will be at Development.
Okay. Things I don't know, the things you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, and maybe the word subcommittee, it just was created from Development Committee, just like Ag Committee was. So originally all that was under Development Committee, and it was broken off from that committee. But our main committee remains, as Mo Iqbal is rewriting these descriptions. Our main committee is still Development Committee for our department. And then we also report to Ag Committee and E&E Committee and Admin Committee as part of our department role, but all of our main activities still go back to our main committee, which is Development.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chairman, this is Alan.
Yes, Ms. Allen, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that energy was considered so important, and environmental science was considered so important, and agriculture was considered so important to this county, that's why those committees were created. Under development, there just wasn't enough time to give full recognition and full opportunity for discussion of the topics that were that tended towards ag or tended towards E&E. So I think that's the reasoning behind making sure that there was enough time to discuss those critical topics. It may be more of a stretch on the time of our directors, but at least it gave them time to make presentations on topics that were important to them and therefore important to us and to our constituents. Thanks for letting me talk.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. The historical perspective from Ms. Wolnick and Ms. Allen are certainly appreciated. Ms. Wojnicki, do you have any historical perspective on this?
No, I think I'll just go back and just say, I think it was Chairman Karen McConaughey who started the Energy and Environment Committee, which is really, I think the board in itself was looking forward to that. It's pretty much like Miss Allen said, we had too many fingers, and so we kind of separated everything and paid more attention to them then.
Okay,
Which
great.
worked out good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Caius.
Mr. Caius, yes, thank you. Does, just a question for Jody really quick, and it still makes sense to have that split out like that way? Is that you still think that's the best way to handle your, where you're at, as opposed to being under environment or some other committee?
Yes, I do. In going through the committee descriptions, it was a great reminder because the description of the Energy and Environment Committee was still under Development Committee under the county code. And so I know that is something that Dr. Iqbal has been working hard to get those descriptions corrected. But it does make sense because we do report to so many different committees that having to go through our full budget presentation at 4 different committees would be burdensome. And so having that single committee where our core functions come from, and then we split off into the other committees that are part of our function in our department works really well for us. So I appreciate the board's flexibility in allowing us to report to the different committees, but then also ensuring that we have like a home committee that is the main basis for our department.
Well, I guess the question was, would environment be the better committee to be your home committee?
Well, that's a great question. And that's a question maybe for the county board to discuss, but we're split in our activities. I mean, you could make probably the same argument for reporting to the the agricultural committee or the admin committee, because we have enough activities in both those as well as in development. So for us, our activities are not predominantly E&E and predominantly development committee. So it's basically an even split.
Well, it's
Okay,
something
thanks.
to think about then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kais, for bringing that up. I have been a little confused sometimes about our committee structure and our reporting structure, so that helps me understand it a little bit better. Thank you. Any more questions for Ms. Wolnick? From the Zoom? Okay. Claire, please, Ms. Ryan.
Sure. I'll start with just a couple of quick updates that aren't on my PowerPoint or on the agenda, but I just want to formally introduce the committee to our summer interns. On the left, we have Johanna, and then on your right, we have Maisie. They are both environmental science undergrads at Big Ten schools. I think it's U of I, right? Yeah, and then Iowa State. Today's Johanna's first day, but Macy's been with us for a few weeks. She was a superstar at the extravaganza. And we are so lucky to have their help this summer. We're hoping to, get some tasks that have been on the back burner done, but we're also hoping to give them a valuable experience. Our department isn't able to financially the word just went out. We're not allowed to pay interns, but we want to, have their reward be a valuable experience and for them to really experience how environmental policy is developed and enacted at the local level. So that's the goal. That was interns. Oh, brief update on the extravaganza. So I mentioned just before we started, just in terms of the number of cars that came through, we're pretty much back at 2019 or pre-pandemic levels. We had almost 800 vehicles come through. So it was a busy day. It was a beautiful day weather-wise. I must have done something right because it would have been way worse to be out there working hard if it was 90 degrees out. So I'm so thankful for that. In terms of material, and my favorite feel-good story from the extravaganza is always the bicycles, because that's pure reuse. So we were able to collect 55 bicycles, which is about 75% more than in previous years. I think it was 2019, they had 33, which is great still, but 55 is even more. So the charity we work with, they're called Working Bikes. What they do is they repair those bicycles and give them to people in need, many in the city of Chicago, but they do also send bikes around the world to needy communities. And wonderful stuff. And I know our paint vendor was very happy with the amount he collected. He guesstimated about 600 gallons of usable latex paint to be turned into new product. And batteries, we've hauled 700 pounds of batteries already, but there's probably going to be close to 3,000 pounds.
Let's see your muscles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let me see your muscles.
Yeah. So good stuff. All right. Now I will get on with my presentation, which is an introduction to extended producer responsibility. Okay, so what is that? Extended producer responsibility is essentially an economic philosophy that states that product manufacturers should bear the costs for end-of-life disposal of their products. This concept was developed as a lot of progressive environmental stuff is in Europe and Sweden specifically in 1990. And the goal is to integrate the environmental externalities associated with mass production of goods into corporate budgeting and decision-making. This is a really critical element of circular economy when we talk about that. And you might look at producer responsibility policy as closing the loop, because right now on that circular diagram there, you have one party is responsible for designing a product, finding the stuff they need to build it, building it, and then giving at least instructions to the end user about proper use of the product. Then it's sold. And outside of warranty stuff, like warranty and returns and possibly refurbishment, depending on what it is, that's where their responsibility ends. So when things just break down as they do over time or become obsolete, those second two parts, the product collection and then recycling, fall on others, both the user of whatever the product is, but also commonly on local governments and on society as a whole. Consumers often have to pay waste disposal fees for various items. State or municipal governments and their taxpayers have to set up specialty collection programs for things that shouldn't be landfills. Waste haulers and recycling facility operators also have to deal with things that pose hazards in their work process and in landfills. And then society as a whole is paying a cost when things that could be recycled but aren't are landfilled, and so on. So how is extended producer responsibility, or EPR, actually enacted in practice? Well, it can be done voluntarily by manufacturers, but it's usually kind of limited. So an example right now would be battery recycling. So there are a couple states that have enacted EPR for batteries. Vermont is the only one that touches on single use, so like alkaline batteries. For everywhere else in the country, it does exist, but it's optional and it's limited. So Call to Recycle is an organization that's funded by battery manufacturers, and that organization subsidizes the cost of recycling through drop-off programs that are typically run by local governments and retailers. Now, pretty much any retailer like Home Depot and Lowe's both use Call to Recycle, but they only collect rechargeable batteries. So lithium ion batteries and nickel metal hydride and nickel cadmium batteries. And that's unfortunately a pretty small proportion. And the reason is that Call to Recycle fully funds that. If you want to collect alkaline or primary batteries, which Kane County does for our internal program, here's our box, you have to pay. It's probably a reduced rate, considering when these boxes are full, they weigh about 50 pounds. So I think we pay $60 per box. That probably just about covers the shipping, not the actual recycling. So it's definitely subsidized, but it's not full EPR. And then TerraCycle is another example that's become sort of popular. Like the picture there is a good example. So Taco Bell is advertising that their sauce packets are now recyclable because they have a program with TerraCycle. And I mean, it's not bad in concept, but the problem is it's kind of brand by brand. So, you know, if you have, say, I don't know, like a disposable razor head and you want to find out if you can TerraCycle it, it's not like you can send all disposable razor heads together. This is also a mail-in program. You have to do it under that particular brand's program. So it really requires a lot of work on the part of the consumer. And I would think only very dedicated recyclers are using stuff like that.
And it's quite expensive, isn't it?
Well, where EPR comes in is where the manufacturer actually pays the cost so that it's free for the participant, but is very quantity limited because the manufacturers buy in for a certain amount. They'll say, we're willing to do, you know, this much per month. So what the, you know, consumers trying to use it often encounter are waiting lists because the program's full for the month. And yeah, essentially the brands aren't paying to recycle at the rate that they produce. It's also very non-transparent. Like, are these items really recycled? I am not the expert on everything recycling, but those sauce packets, I'm not sure how they would separate the plastic and aluminum layers to actually recycle those.
They'd have to peel them with their fingernails, right?
Right. So you just kind of have to believe that they're doing it, because otherwise, what do you know? And then there's been a controversy over labeling. There were lawsuits where, like, our company is allowed to put the recycling symbol and say this product is recyclable if the only way to recycle it is through TerraCycle. And I think the answer from these lawsuits is no, they shouldn't be doing that. So the end conclusion from this slide is basically that EPR is likely to be most effective and equitable in terms of access when it's enacted through legislation. So I wanted to present some hallmarks of good EPR legislation. I did not come up with these. They're paraphrased from the Product Stewardship Institute, which is a national organization working on EPR. We are a member. So the first hallmark is producer responsibility. It essentially, that's the whole definition of EPR, that the product manufacturers design and manage and ultimately pay for the end of life disposal of products as a condition of sale. So the law is going to say, if you want to sell X thing in Illinois, you have to do Y. And all products in a product class should be covered. So for example, if PSI is working on battery EPR, they're going to want to see alkaline batteries included too, even though they're not quite as hazardous for the environment as some other types. They want to see a level playing field, which means some level of equity among producers. There should be avenues for all producers to participate. It does get complicated when you have international entities producing and import-export. That does get very complicated, but they do consider that when they're developing these bills. It needs to be a results-based, preferably following the reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy, where the program should be looking at ways to reduce the use of hazardous materials, certainly reuse and repair, and then recycling last. Producers have, but inside that hierarchy, producers have a lot of flexibility about what they want the program to look like. However, they need to develop for themselves quantitative milestones or targets so that the effectiveness can actually be measured. And consumer education will always be a key component of reaching those results, because you can design the best program in the world, but if no one knows that that's what they should be using to get rid of whatever the thing is, it doesn't work. It's important for these programs to be transparent and accountable. There should be stakeholder engagement, public meetings, publicly accessible program plans and reports. And then generally always there's going to be some role for governments, retailers, and consumers. For example, governments often approve the program plans developed by the manufacturers. The government may play a pretty strong role in setting those numerical targets and enforcing participation. Retailers are responsible for making sure that, the condition of sale part is met. So they need to make sure that brands that they're stocking are following the law. And then consumers are ultimately the ones who are going to, make the decision to take the thing, whatever it is, to the right place when it is at the end of its life. Just some other common elements you often see in there. So typically EPR programs are managed under producer responsibility organizations, the acronym there being PRO. They're generally nonprofit, and their membership is composed of the manufacturer for whatever type of material it is they're working on. With our battery box here, Call to Recycle is a PRO. The amount that manufacturers pay in is usually based on the volume of sales. But there may be some kind of a de minimis or a flat fee for small producers to avoid placing, an undue burden on small businesses. A very important element is the eco-modulation of fees, which means that the fee is going to be smaller. So what the manufacturer has to pay in is going to be smaller for products that are specifically designed to be reusable, refillable, compostable, repairable, designed for improved recyclability, or that incorporate a certain amount of post-consumer recycled content. They can and should incorporate existing infrastructure and partnerships. So for example, if more states, or even if the federal government were to develop battery EPR, Call to Recycle could become the PRO for the national program, even though it existed long before the law did. It's important to maintain existing relationships and use what's working correctly to get the job done. And then it's going to include a convenience standard as well. Like, it would not be acceptable for a consumer to be expected to drive 50 miles or pay, $100 in shipping, for example, to dispose of an item. So yeah, that's just kind of like the where and when of recycling. And then often, but not always, is accompanied by a landfill ban for the covered products. That's essentially what drives electronic recycling in Illinois, for example. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail. So what EPR do we have in Illinois? Well, the first law was passed in 2006 and the second in 2010, and they both dealt with mercury. So the first was looking at a type of switch used in automobile manufacturing that contains mercury. So it means that basically car manufacturers have to fund the removal of those switches during the auto scrapping salvage process. And then the second is mercury containing thermostats, and that requires thermostat manufacturers to fund safe disposal and mercury recovery from those thermostats. I just mentioned the Consumer Electronic Recycling Act. I would classify it as only partially EPR because the actual funding comes from several areas, and we'll talk about that a little bit. It incorporates many EPR concepts though. So an industry organization funds the transportation and actual recycling process to recover materials from covered consumer electronics. However, the collection component is unfunded. So that means like establishing convenient drop-off points, or instead holding events like the extravaganza. There's no funding in the law for that. So counties don't have to participate. The burden does fall on counties in the state, but it's sort of an optional burden, sort of. So for example, if Kane County decided we're not going to deal with electronics anymore, you're going to have 500,000 people with electronic devices that they need to dispose of that cannot be landfilled by law. So what are they going to do if we have no collection points, nowhere to take them? I mean, I guess the first thing that would happen is suddenly Best Buy would be inundated because they do have a recycling program, but they would probably complain pretty quick and cancel that program because they're not obligated to do it. And then you'd see dumping all over the place. So it's not really optional if you don't want things dumped all over the place. What we are allowed to do is charge program user fees for televisions and computer monitors that are supposed to cover the cost of collection for the program, essentially. And as you folks know, we do all that through eWorks. So eWorks collects the fees in Kane County, but eWorks also puts up the expense to staff our sites and everything. And it's also somewhat limited in scope to 17 listed device types. There are some really important and really common electronics that are not covered in that law. They include cell phones, headphones, most stereo equipment, and lots of things, unfortunately, nowadays that contain lithium-ion batteries, which means they do pose a hazard if they're inappropriately landfilled. So I think the law is in need of some updating at some point soon. But happy news is that eWorks does collect for us all of those items that I listed, even though they're not required to by law. Okay. And then we have a new bill. It was passed this year called the Drug Take Back Act. So it means manufacturers of covered drugs must individually or collectively organize and fund take back programs for the drugs by January 1st of 2024. Covered drugs include most solid and liquid medicines, both over the counter and prescriptions. However, there are some interesting exclusions. Doesn't include supplements of any kind. It doesn't include sharps, which are a big disposal issue. It doesn't include drugs that are only administered in a medical setting, so like chemotherapy drugs, some more dangerous drugs, not covered. And then kind of annoyingly, it also doesn't cover drugs in unit dose packaging. So that's anything in a blister pack or anything. Like I just, I took a short trip and I forgot my allergy medication. So I ran into Walgreens to get just a 24 pack of pills, and each one was individually wrapped, which I didn't realize. But that means that, for example, that would not be covered if I needed to get rid of them by this law. Authorized collectors and operators of collection points are going to be pretty limited, which makes sense when, because some of these drugs will be narcotic. So it will be law enforcement agencies, other units of local government that are cooperating with law enforcement agencies can also do it, hazard material drop-off sites, and then other entities that have been authorized by the DEA to collect scheduled materials for destruction. So that last part, the authorized by DEA, would include pharmacies. However, pharmacies cannot be forced to participate. There's a convenience standard, which means every county must have one site plus one additional per 50,000 people in the state. So in King County, there are going to have to be at least 11 take-back locations, as long as there are 11 potentially authorized collectors, which there are. There's more than 11 police departments in the state, so they're in the county. So there you go. And then existing take-backs can continue. For example, a lot of Walgreens have kiosks right now for drug take-back. So they'll be able to continue to operate those should they choose to do so. But the drug producers may need to start compensating Walgreens to do that, which they don't currently, as far as I know. All right, getting towards the end here. So Kane County and our department's role in advancing EPR. So as I mentioned, we are a member of the Product Stewardship Institute and its Illinois chapter, which is called the Illinois Product Stewardship Council. That council solicits sponsors in the state assembly, so essentially elected officials who are interested in this kind of thing, and then works with them to draft potential legislation. There is work in various stages of progress to develop EPR legislation for carpet, latex paint, solar panels, and wind turbine components. Those three were all introduced last session. I don't think they went anywhere, but they'll probably be reintroduced. Packaging and paper products, that's a huge bill because it covers so much stuff. And the idea is that if it was passed and funded successfully, it would fund curbside recycling across the entire state. So huge thing. That is in draft form. It has not been introduced yet. The plan right now, they want to introduce it next spring. And then other materials are batteries, mattresses, and medical sharps. Right now, I'm working on comments on that packaging and paper product draft bill. I have a few concerns that some of the definitions they're using are a little confusing, and they're maybe not thinking all the way through some of the implications, especially on smaller businesses. But we'll get there. And then, so should the bill be introduced and they're looking for supports or witness slips or anything like that, that would all be coordinated through the legislative committee as is proper. Yeah.
Ryan, are we already working with our own legislative committee on these bills? I can help with that if
we haven't.
Ms. Strathman.
We haven't yet. I mean, one of the problems I have encountered with the Product Stewardship Council is they'll say this bill was introduced, we need witness slips for it on this date, and that date will be like the next Friday. So it doesn't really give us time to run it through a committee, I don't think.
But we are working on a legislative agenda, and we can get these bills on our legislative agenda. Ms. Strathman, would you like to pipe up, or are you still there? Anyway.
Yes, I'm still here. Yes. Yeah, I think we should, maybe I can talk to Claire after the meeting and see what we can do, how we can move this forward.
Okay, please include me in those conversations. This is interesting stuff. Okay,
good.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then just to end with some frequently asked questions. So does it work? Like, is there like evidence that this is doing good in the environment? Well, yes. So just in Illinois in 2020, those consumer electronics manufacturers paid to transport and recycle 12,147 tons of cover material in Illinois. That's just in 1 year. So that is material we can reasonably assume would have probably gone in the landfill without that program. Yay. And then since they began, the mercury thermostat and switch programs together have recovered 1,547 pounds of mercury. Now that sounds like a small amount compared to 12,000 tons, but keep in mind, mercury is acutely toxic, and that amounts, that 1,500 pounds, could potentially pollute 90 billion gallons of water beyond the EPA safe drinking water standard. So that's a really good program. And not to assume that if they hadn't been recycled, every single one would have polluted water, but there's always a potential. So I want to keep mercury out of the environment. So another question, common question, don't consumers just end up paying for recycling anyway through, higher product prices or the program user fees like we see with the TVs and monitors? Well, for packaging and paper products at least, and really for any item that's produced in very high volume, where each item is at a very low cost, the compliance cost per item is considered negligible, almost unmeasurable. So you tend not to see a big boost in price that can be attributed to the EPR. You can also specifically disallow the pass-through of costs in legislation. The Illinois Drug Take-Back Act does that. It's like right in the preamble, I think it says you're going to start taking back the drugs you're selling in Illinois, and you cannot charge more to consumers for those items. How exactly you would prove that, especially today when prices are increasing for all sorts of reasons, I'm not sure, but at least it's in there. And at the very least, you can at least more equitably distribute costs and improve access to recycling in underserved areas through those convenience standards. And finally, it provides corporations with financial incentives to develop products that are better for the environment, either reusable, more recyclable, or using the post-consumer content. So that is all I had on that. And I'm happy to take questions or comments or discussion.
Questions,
have-
comments, or discussion?
I do.
Ms.
If I can.
Chirag?
Oh, thank you very much. As I'm, all right, now I'm good. Yay. Hi, good morning. The recycling program for the electronics, please let me know. I had heard that those items are then gathered together and shipped to China, where they are recycled. They used to be recycled here in the US, but that is no longer the case. What happens to them? Once we gather them and give them to our distributor, where do they go from there?
Yeah, they actually go a lot shorter trip than China. They just go to Elk Grove. So yeah. eWorks is both our collector and they're considered our recycler as well. So they actually do the disassembly part at least in Elk Grove. And it's actually, they're a charitable organization and they utilize school programs and for folks with learning disabilities, often
Developmental disabilities, that's correct.
yeah, often folks on the autism spectrum,
Mhm.
and then they actually hire adults who are post school, especially if they've gone through the program already, after they leave school to do some of this disassembly, and they train them to do it. It's not it's very organized, and they're required by their own data security certifications to remove and render all of the data containing components on site, which they do. And yeah, they strip wires on site. They essentially are getting things down to the, the circuit boards at least, and the which are highly recyclable, the wire, which is highly recyclable, and then they sell them on from there to smelters domestically. So they're melted down. I am not aware that eWorks ships anything to China, but I will ask, because I could be wrong.
Because it's nice to know where those products that we're spending our resources are going.
Yeah.
The next question I have, if you can please check, are they being paid, the people who work for the recycler, are since they are people with developmental disabilities, which have oftentimes been paid a lower wage, if they are paying base at least a minimum wage, if not more?
I can ask those questions. I know for sure the folks at our collection points are paid.
Okay.
And if they come to our events, like the extravaganza, those folks are definitely all paid at least minimum wage.
Okay.
At the centers, the folks that are there for school programs are not paid because it's considered a training opportunity.
It's an internship. That's correct.
Yeah. After they're finished and come back as employees, I am not sure what the rate of pay would be, but I can ask.
That'd be good. That
Yeah.
would be helpful. Thank you. We want to make sure that the people that we're contracting with are being paid. I can't even say a livable wage, but at least a minimum wage.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Any other questions? I just wanted to say that 1 year, you talked about recycling programs that get canceled. 1 year at the Green Fest, I took light bulbs, and then I had to take them. I had talked to Ace Hardware ahead of time, and they said they would take them. So I took all my light bulbs from the Green Fest to Ace Hardware, gave it to them. The next week I went to recycle light bulbs, and they had canceled their program.
Yeah.
I had overwhelmed them in one week. So,
Battery, like alkaline battery programs are going extinct.
they just overwhelm people. And hopefully we can reach a point where we're no longer selling alkaline batteries. That would be the cradle, right? This is, sometimes they call these programs cradle to cradle. So that's the full circle of the program. So if you can only someday only sell rechargeable batteries, think of the alkaline batteries that would eliminate. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that report. And now we need to move on to Ms. Ivy Clee.
Good morning, committee members. Today on the agenda, I have a resolution authorizing a contract with Pale Blue Dot LLC for professional consulting services related to the King County Climate Action Implementation Plan. So this resolution will go through Energy and Environmental Committee today, then on to Finance and Budget, then Executive Committee and County Board. That is the flow. This item was not budgeted for. The appropriation amount is $74,790. And the funding source will come from Fund 421, the Civic Contribution Fund. I'll read the summary for you. The Energy and Environmental Committee has approved funding from Fund 421 Civic Contribution Fund to fund consulting services for the creation of the King County Climate Action Implementation Plan. I believe at the May Energy and Environmental Committee meeting, we received a consensus from committee members to move forward with a request for qualifications with our purchasing department. So those proposals were reviewed and references were contacted. The King County Climate Action Implementation Working Group, which is made up of elected officials and staff from King County, City of Elgin, and City of Geneva, are recommending today an award of the contract to Pale Blue Dot.
Thank you.
Mhm.
May I have a motion?
Actually, I have a question first, if that's okay. Is this a one-year contract?
So I can go through, it's not a one-year contract, but it's a contract to create the plan. And the timeline would look like completion of the plan by next June. So by June of 2023.
Oh, it's
So
it's sort of a one-year contract.
yeah, and it's also flexible dependent on how long it takes to do the entire project. I can go through the implementation schedule. It's not up there, but I can just read through it. So the project kickoff, assuming that the project would be approved through all of the committees, would be in September of 2022 this year. And then existing conditions of the county, so looking through documentation and assessing our existing conditions, would occur from September of this year to November. So that would look like taking a climate baseline assessment and creating strategic goals and a recommendation report. So that would include a vulnerability assessment, a greenhouse gas forecast, a renewable energy potential study, and additional community indicators. So all of that would be included in that step. After that, we would have community engagement, so surveying, partner outreach, and listening sessions that would occur between September of 2022 to December of 2022, so the end of this year. After that, there would be team engagement from the Climate Action Plan team. That would be from December, so the end of this year until June of 2023. Oh, sorry, I misspoke earlier, so I'll keep going. So that would go from December of 2022 to June of 2023. And then after that engagement, working with the team, there would be a draft of the climate action plan between May of 2023 to again through June of 2023. There would be community engagement to review that draft from June of 2023 to July of 2023. And then there would be implementation tools developed after that review. So that those implementation tools will be what we're going to give to our municipalities to actually implement the plan. That'll happen from June until August of 2023. And then in August of 2023 will be the finalization of the climate action plan. So just about 1 year from the time of the kickoff.
Okay, just one more question. Are we the only ones appropriating the amount? Is the city of Elgin or the city of Geneva also pitching in?
So the Climate Action Implementation Working Group was created as kind of a working group to discuss where not only King County is at with climate action implementation, but also where our municipalities are at, and kind of create a discussion group for all of us to see how the county can assist our municipalities and cities with implementing climate action goals, and also to see where they're at as well. So City of Elgin is currently pursuing a greenhouse gas inventory for themselves, which potentially would be a tool that we would give the municipalities from this plan. But as of right now, no, the county would be the source of funding for the consulting work that would be done as a part of the plan. And if it would be helpful, I can run through a summary of the scope of work that was included within the request for qualifications, just so you know what exactly we were looking for from a consultant, and what the evaluation criteria was when we were reviewing. That'd be
I
helpful.
can just jump in here too, Ivy, is the idea with the county-wide climate action implementation plan is to create a framework that then the municipalities would utilize that framework to create their own plan from. And so we're creating an overarching, very broad brush plan that will need to be tailored to each municipality. So each municipality will need to invest their own funds to create their own plan. So we're providing the basis for these municipal plans. So they will be providing funding, but it will be to fund that next step to take their plan to tailor it to their individual municipality, which is similar to what we did with the stormwater ordinance, is that the county has the overall ordinance, but each municipality has then taken that ordinance and tailored to their own needs in their community.
So it includes more than just the city of Elgin and city of Geneva.
In
It's all
general,
the
yeah, in
municipalities.
general, we
Okay.
believe this will be most beneficial to our smallest communities that don't have the staff or the resources to create their own plan. And seeing that Elgin and the city of Aurora have the ability and the staff to do their own, they likely will use our plan less than a community like Caneville or Big Rock that doesn't have the wherewithal to create a climate action plan on their own.
Okay, then I will move it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Woznicki. Second, please.
Caius, second.
Caius seconds. Any other discussion? Strathman? Oh,
Yeah, Madam Chair,
yes, please. Go ahead, Mr. Caius.
Caius, yeah, just a question on the funding. When this gets to finance, the source of the funding is appropriate, I'm assuming. I'm trying to remember what we talked about before, so maybe refresh my memory, where the funding was coming from, like the civic contribution fund, the source, and that it's appropriate, and that it'll not rob anyone else of something or some other program of
Yes.
performance.
So the Civic Contribution Fund is a part of the electric aggregation program at the county. So the current contract that we have is a 2-year contract with Aligo Energy. And when proposals came back when we went out to bid for a new contract, the proposal that our consultant recommended was going with Aligo's contract of a green aggregation program. And with that program came a civic contribution fund. And the Energy and Environmental Committee members discussed whether that funding amount would be distributed back to residents who are enrolled in the program, which would look like distributing individual checks to residents and mailing those out, and kind of like a rebate program, versus keeping the civic contribution fund allocated for projects and used toward our budget for sustainability, which would then go back to the public as a public service. So that was the consensus that we received from the committee members. And then we did, I think it was the May meeting it would have been, at the May meeting, we received consensus to move forward with the request for qualifications for this plan. So it would have been prior to that, which it would be when we received the consensus to allocate the amount of funding
Sure,
for that.
sure. I remember now. It's coming back to
Mhm.
me. Just
Okay.
wanted to double check that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Clee, for all that research and figuring this out. Roll call, please.
Allen,
Allen, I.
Caius,
Definite yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Absolutely, yes.
Wallace, Woznicki,
Yes.
Bates.
Bates, yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's move on to the next item, sustainability update.
Yep. So up next, I will have some sustainability updates for all the committee members. So the Judicial Center project updates. I was supposed to go out on site today with Madam Chair and Ms. Bates, and unfortunately it's raining today, so we will not be on site. But I do have a lot of pictures to show, and I want to provide some updates for today. We are in the midst of engineering. Once that is completed, we will move on to racking for the project. We are preparing to pour concrete for the transformers that are going to be on site. There is trenching and boring that was done this week. I believe it was done this week for the wires that are going to go underground. There will be preliminary seeding to hold down the grading, which will occur soon. The electrical gear and transformers should be delivered on site shortly. And then once that is on site and the civil engineering has been completed, we will work with, the project team will work with Detective Kadich to get access to the Judicial Center building and all of the electrical equipment that's within there that the project team team needs to connect to. Also an update, there was a discussion had with Judy Dawson, who has a program with the Judicial Center where they train returning citizens in various trainings such as like OSHA and excavator trainings, and then they pair them with an employer so that once they graduate from the program, they have a job, they have an employer, and the training is free to them. And we spoke with Judy Dawson quite a while ago about how we can support the program and provide green employers or reach out to green employers to be able to get some kind of green job training for the participants of that program. And so an update on that is we recently did have conversations with Judy. She has found somebody who can teach a NABCEP certification. So that is a certification that most solar installers need to be able to work on site. It's kind of become something that everyone has. So that would be necessary to train the participants of that program. She has found someone to teach the course. And we are hoping that we can work with the current solar partner, GRNE Solar, as a part of the solar project for them to come in and do a workshop. That would be like a one-day workshop with the program participants. The certification course does take a longer time than one day, so they would probably do some kind of workshop. So we're working on that right now, and we'd like to really get some kind of event or workshop where we can have hands-on active learning for those program participants. And then support Judy in also finding employers and also funding for the program. Any questions on that before I move on? There's a couple pictures on the next slide. The picture on the right, you can see some large equipment on site, and there's a lot of dirt. The Judicial Center's in the background. All right, so here,
This is the most exciting
Ivy,
thing.
I'm sorry, excuse me, just for a minute. It's Corinne, and I'm sorry, Chair Bates, that I interrupted. But before you go on, I just want to compliment you on that program. I know that it's very important that solar energy to follow, what is it? I think the CEJA bill encourages people from diverse backgrounds to work on solar energy as an economic opportunity for them. And I congratulate you for reaching out and getting the necessary classes and certification for our own population who may need that training and will benefit from it. So well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly the idea that we have right now. So Ms. Bates and I are both looking within the CEJA bill in hopes of finding funding so that we can support Judy in the program and ideally create a foundation and stepping stone so that future projects, we might be able to have our own graduates of the program working on those projects, which would be wonderful. So that's the hope.
Perfect. Mavis, perhaps we can talk offline. I think I have a suggestion that maybe we can do a little bit more research on.
Okay, wonderful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I can go through these pictures and explain a little bit more. So I was on site a little while ago, I believe it was 2 Fridays ago, or maybe last Friday. And I went out on site and some engineers and electrical engineers were walking us through project progress. So these pictures are of the transformer pads, which, like I said, they're going to be pouring concrete into these and then putting the transformers on top of them. All of the wires and that are going to go underground are going to connect through these and then connect through to the transformers. And you can see they're doing digging alongside of those to connect to the electrical rooms that are inside the Judicial Center. They were working on that last week. So this is, so I'll go back a second. This picture is on the east side of the Judicial Center. So that yellow object is the generator, the backup generator for the Judicial Center. So that's where that's at location wise. And then this image is to the north area, the loading dock area of the courthouse. So we're also going to have another transformer location over here that's going to connect to the electrical in the courthouse. I think there's 3 different points of connection total. So that's over there. And then you can see photos. That's GRNE staff taking the site. So here we have some ground moving and excavation. So we're currently, the excavation company, I believe the rain is going to hold them back a little bit with timing, but they're currently still ground moving and leveling out that berm, building up the southern berm, moving the dirt around. So these are some photos of what it looks like. The photo on the top left is facing southwest. So facing the southwest corner, facing southwest of the corner of Britcher and Peck.
Closer to Peck.
Yes, closer to Peck. And the picture on the right is the north berm facing southeast. And then these are some other photos. I believe these photos are facing Peck as well, directly west.
It's really an enormous,
Mm-hmm.
it's enormous.
And then, yes, it is. There's a lot going on site. There's a lot of activity. And I'm hoping to get out sometime soon when it is not raining and take some more photos of progress for you all.
With Madam Chair.
And if any other board members are interested in organizing a site visit, please let me know. I can coordinate with our project engineer and set up a tour. We had a walkthrough with some engineers and it was great to get to know more of what was going on.
I want to say that this is Beeman Excavators and they are a union excavator company. Those big yellow machines are Beeman Excavators. Okay, thanks.
If there are no more questions, I'll move on to the next update.
Okay.
So my next update is on the Kane County Solar Power Hour for the Group Buy program. So the Group Buy program is organized by the Midwest Renewable Energy Association and the Citizens Utility Board. So Kane County did host a solar power hour in June, and we're going to host another one in August. The solar power hours are kind of like an educational webinar, but we're going to have an in-person one in August. Their audience would be the citizens of the public, anyone who's interested in putting solar on their house. They can attend these and also learn about more opportunities for residential solar and how they could participate. It's an hour of information. There could be questions and more resources. So we will have a solar power hour on Tuesday, August 9th at 6:30 in the Kane County Auditorium. Please feel free to share this info with friends who are interested in learning more about residential solar opportunities. We did host a solar power hour in June virtually, and there was a lot of questions and activity from residents, which was great. And I want to say thank you to the board members who joined for that. I'll have an RSVP link soon for the August meeting, and I'll send an email out with that once I have it. Just a general update on the program. The Group Buy is still working toward the first milestone of 50 kilowatts of solar installed, but right now there's over 300 kilowatts that are proposed on 45 properties, which is great.
Great. Thank you. Is that?
Yep, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cui. Is there any new business? I know we're over time. Sorry, Jobs. New business. So my comments will be short. I want to thank my fantastic staff, as always, for the work you've put in on all these wonderful projects. I want to thank the committee for approving our resolution today. I believe this climate action plan is something that will be the legacy of this environmental committee for many years to come, as will be our beautiful solar panels. So thank you for your work on that. May I have a motion to place the reports on file?
Allen moves.
Miss Allen,
Woniki, seconds.
Ms. Nikki seconds. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Allen,
Allen, I.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Wallace, Nikki,
Yes.
Bates.
Bates, yes. There's no reason for executive session. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved by Woniki.
Nikki?
Strathman, second.
Caius, second.
Cheryl Strathman seconds. I don't think you've gotten to move, Cheryl.
We don't have Kenyon to to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Great meeting.